The rotunda did not whisper, it held its breath. The amber haze from the overhead rings caught the dust motes and held them still. The chamber curved upward in concentric tiers. 2,400 seats carved into the dead moon's stone. 46 species filled them. 9,200 years of certainty packed into a single room. One seat was empty. Elder Sylvith rose from the highest tier. Her stone-colored face gave nothing away. She was 499 years old. She had been there when the humans arrived. She had watched them sit in that empty chair for 3 centuries, speaking only 44 times into the silence. 44 statements, 44 moments of quiet precision that no one had bothered to remember. "We were warned," Sylvith said. Her voice carried without amplification a dry rustle that reached every corner of the rotunda. "We did not listen, and now they have walked away." She sat down. The chamber stayed quiet. No one moved. No one spoke. Vex Kor sat in his counselor's seat, his obsidian scales gleaming under the amber light, his bioluminescent ridges pulsing faintly. He had expected celebration. He had expected congratulations. He had spent over a century maneuvering for this moment, built his reputation on the belief that the quiet ones were the weak ones. He looked at the empty seat. The coat was gone. The gray wool coat that Ambassador Sarah Kale had worn for 41 years, worn smooth at the cuffs, with a coffee stain on the left sleeve that she had never cleaned. 19 years, that stain had sat there. 19 years of patient endurance. A brown smear on gray wool that the Junior Valley diplomat would later remember as the first clue. But the coat was gone. The ambassador was gone, the humans were gone, and the galaxy had just realized it did not know how to ask the right question. "CTA, you might think they'd celebrate, but the quiet ones don't celebrate. They just wait, and you should probably know what they were waiting for. 41 years earlier. The diplomatic annex on Station Eternus was not built for comfort. It was a 4-kilometer ring of metal and crystal, a bureaucratic machine that housed the procedural machinery of 1,000 worlds. The corridors smelled of recycled air and the mineral bite of ion-filtered light. Sarah Kale stepped off the transit shuttle with one bag. She was 23 years old, fresh out of the Earth Diplomatic Service's extended program, and the first thing she did was spill her coffee on her new coat. She looked down at the gray wool. The stain was spreading, dark against the light fabric. There was no time to change. The obsidian rotunda was waiting. The council was waiting. The entire galaxy was waiting to see what the newest species had to say. She walked into the rotunda and sat down. The coffee stain on her left sleeve caught the amber light. She sat in the human delegation's seat, the same seat that would later sit empty, and she waited. She did not speak that day. She did not speak the next day either. 6 months passed before she said her first word. High Counselor Vex Kor was speaking. He stood at the main platform, over 2 meters of obsidian-scaled arrogance, his ridges pulsing with the rhythm of his own rhetoric. He was talking about resource allocation. He was talking about borders. He was talking about species that could not govern themselves. He did not mention humans by name. He did not need to. Kale listened. She had been trained to listen. The galaxy was loud, and most of what it said was noise. She had been taught to wait for the signal beneath the static. When Vex Kor finished, the rotunda waited for the human response. Kale stood. She walked to the speaking platform. She looked at the assembled delegations, 46 species, 9,200 years of institutional memory staring back at her. She said one word. Acknowledged. Then she sat down. Vex Kor's ridges flickered. He had expected a challenge, a rebuttal, a defense. He had not expected acknowledgement. He had not expected silence. He stared at her for a long moment, then moved on to the next agenda item. He would spend the next 40 years learning that silence was not emptiness. In an office on Earth, a legal attaché named Sarah Chen was reading the Viron Concord, all 1,887 pages of it. Most of it was procedural boilerplate, the accumulated detritus of 9,000 years of galactic governance. But on page 1492, clause 12, subsection 7, she found something. She wrote it into a contingency plan. Should Earth's delegation withdraw for any reason, all jointly maintained installations revert to human operational control within 72 hours. This reversion is permanent and non-negotiable. She closed the document. She filed it. She showed it to a junior attaché named Sarah Kale. This is your insurance policy, Chen said. You will never use it, but it's there. Kale read the paragraph twice. She nodded, acknowledged. 41 years later, Vex Corps finally got what he wanted. The motion was simple. Humanity's observer status was terminated. Their delegation was withdrawn. Their voice, such as it was, erased from the record. The vote was 349 to 44. Vex Corps stood at the platform, his ridges bright with triumph. He had taken 9 systems through political maneuvering. He had built his career on the belief that the quiet ones were the weak ones. He looked at the empty human seat and smiled. Elder Sylvith watched from the highest tier. She said nothing. The motion passed. The doors closed. The rotunda fell silent. For 12 seconds, no one spoke. 12 seconds of pure silence in a chamber that had not known silence for 9,200 years. Vex Corps smiled. He did not know what was coming. In the diplomatic annex on Station Eternus, the formal notice arrived via courier drone. Jax Morrison carried the data crystal into Sarah Kale's office. He was 24, fresh-faced, nervous, chewing his lip. He had been assigned to Earth's delegation for 11 months. He had never seen his boss smile. He had only ever seen her look patient. The vote passed, Jax said. 349 to 44. They're expelling us. Kale set down her coffee cup. The coffee was cold. It had been cold for a while. She did not look at Jax. She looked at the data crystal. The red card, she said. In my desk, transmit one word to the address on it. Jax found the card. Worn red leather. The address handwritten in ink that had faded 41 years ago. He looked at Kale.
What's the word?
Acknowledged. Jax hesitated. That's it. Kale looked at him. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back. Her coat was worn smooth at the cuffs. The coffee stain on her left sleeve caught the station's amber light. Yes, Jax? That's it! Jax transmitted the word. He did not know what it meant. 3 hours later, human personnel began their systematic withdrawal. Cargo haulers, medical frigates, diplomatic shuttles. Every human ship departed within the 72-hour window. Not one piece of equipment left behind. Not one log entry incomplete. On Cradle Station, Commander Briggs was the last human to leave. He was 49, married to a botanist, father of a daughter. He stood at the airlock, looked back at the station he had served on for 7 years, and said nothing. His shuttle departed. 47 minutes later, the defense grid failed its first diagnostic test. The Council did not notice. They measured noise. They had measured noise for 9,200 years. They had never been right about the quiet ones. He did not know what it meant, but the system went dark, and Vex Corps did not notice. No one did. They were too busy measuring noise. The system went dark, and Vex Corps did not notice. No one did. They were too busy measuring noise. 8 weeks passed. The Vrethkar Empire moved into the contested Triox system, a region jointly protected by human and Valith patrols for 150 years. The humans had withdrawn. The Valith were outnumbered 14 to 1. The Vrethkar took the system in 47 hours. The Valith ambassador sent a formal protest to the Council. The Council took 4 days to respond. We regret the loss and will investigate. The words were warm. The meaning was cold. The Valith ambassador read the response once, folded the document, and did not reply. Sylvith received a copy. She read it in her private chambers, a small room carved into the dead moon's stone lit by a single amber lamp. She was 499 years old. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had seen species join the Council and species leave. She had never seen a species leave the way the humans had left. No speeches, no protests, no final declarations. Just one word, transmitted from a desk where the coffee had gone cold, and then a withdrawal so quiet that the Council had not realized what it meant until it was too late. She looked at the protest document. She looked at the response. She set both aside. She did not speak. She waited. On Cradle Station, the defense grid's diagnostic tests had become a routine. Every 47 minutes, the system flagged an error. The Vrethkar administrators assigned to the station logged each error, flagged each report, and sent each report to the Vrethkar Central Command. Vex Corps received the first 10 reports. He read the first. He skimmed the next 9. He dismissed them as software errors. The humans had nothing to do with it, he told his aide. They were maintenance workers, not engineers. The reports were filed. The truth was not pursued. On Earth, Admiral Elena Vasquez watched the withdrawal from Earth Defense Command. The tactical display was 8 meters wide. a wall of blue and red lights that represented the balance of galactic power. Every returning human ship was tagged in blue. Every council facility was tagged in red. The red markers began blinking at the 72-hour mark. 12 systems reporting instability. 14 facilities with no human technicians. A border defense network that had been maintained by a species the council had just expelled. Vasquez drank from her chipped mug. The mug said World's Passable Admiral. She had owned it for 23 years. Close the door, she said. Her tactical officer, a woman named Lieutenant Commander Hayes, closed the door. Are we going to tell them? Hayes asked. Vasquez looked at the display. The red markers were blinking faster now. The humans had been maintaining the council's borders for 3 centuries. 1,400 sensor technicians, 900 maintenance engineers, 400 tactical analysts. All of them had withdrawn. Tell them what? Vasquez said. They asked us to leave. We left. She set down her mug. She did not look away from the display. They'll figure it out, she said. Or they won't. Either way, we're done. On a transport shuttle heading back to Earth, Commander Cole Briggs sat in the passenger cabin, looking at a photograph. His daughter Mira was 14. She had her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness. He had served on Cradle Station for 7 years. He had been part of the defense network that held the borders together. He had never been thanked. He had never expected thanks. He looked out the window. The station was receding. The defense grid was failing. He knew it would fail. He had written the diagnostic manual. He did not say anything. He put the photograph back in his breast pocket and closed his eyes. In the diplomatic annex on Station Eternus, the coffee was still cold. Sarah Cale sat at her desk. The annex had been stripped of human personnel. The corridors were empty. The lights were dimmed to minimum power. She had asked to stay. She had asked to be the last one. Jax Morrison was packing his final belongings. He had not stopped chewing his lip since the vote passed. She's not coming back, Jax said. The council. They're not going to come crawling back. Cale did not look up from her desk. They won't crawl, she said. They will arrive with dignity. They will speak of error and regret and the difficulty of governance. They will request that we reconsider. Jax stopped packing. And we won't. Cale looked up. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back. Her coat was worn smooth at the cuffs. The coffee stain on her left sleeve caught the low light. No, Jax. We won't. The word acknowledged had a very specific meaning. It meant that the protocol was in motion. It meant that the contingency was activated. It meant that the humans were leaving, and they were not coming back. Jax did not know all of this. He had not been told. But he had started to suspect. The red card, he said. That was the protocol, wasn't it? The contingency plan. Cale nodded. Sarah Chen wrote it 41 years ago. I was 23. I had just spilled coffee on my coat. She looked at the stain. I never had it cleaned. Jax looked at the stain. He had seen it every day for 11 months. He had never asked about it. Why not? Cale did not answer. She looked out the window. Station Eternus was a 4-kilometer ring of metal and crystal, a machine that had housed the procedural machinery of 1,000 worlds. It was empty now. The humans were gone. Her name was Sarah Chen, Cale said. She was 38 years old. She had been an attaché for 11 years. She read the entire Veron Concord, all 1,887 pages of it. Jax waited. She found the clause. Cale said, Section 7, Clause 12, Subsection 7, page 1492. She wrote it into a contingency plan. She gave it to me. Cale looked at her sleeve. I was supposed to be the one who never used it, but I used it. She paused. Sarah died 6 years ago. She never saw the protocol activated. She never knew we used it. Jax did not know what to say. She would have laughed, Cale said. She always thought it would be something small. A treaty clause, a forgotten detail. She was right. She looked up. Go, Jax. Your shuttle leaves in 90 minutes. Jax hesitated. What will you do? Cale sat back in her chair. The coffee on her desk was cold. The station was empty. The council was measuring noise. I'll wait, she said. 3 weeks later, the Vrethkar Empire's annexation campaign hit its first obstacle. The Triox system was quiet. The Valith had withdrawn. The humans had withdrawn. The Vrethkar fleet had moved in and established their positions without firing a single shot. But the orbital approach vectors were mined. 4,200 human-built mines, hidden along every approach vector. placed over 150 years of joint patrols. They had never needed to fire. They had only needed to be found. The Vrethkar fleet stopped advancing. The mines were not weapons. They were warnings, a message carved in metal and explosives. We were here. We saw you coming. We could have stopped you. We chose not to. The report reached Vex Corps' desk at 0347 Council Standard Time. He read it once. He read it a second time. His bioluminescent ridges began to pulse. Classify this, he said. The report was filed. The truth was not pursued. But Kalin, the junior Valley diplomat, had read the Veyron Concord. He was 34 years old. He was sweaty, nervous, and correct 3 times in his career. Each time he had been ignored. The Concord was old. Most of it was procedural boilerplate. Kalin had been assigned to review it. It was a punishment detail, a way to keep him busy and out of the way. He found Section 7, Clause 12, Subsection 7 on the morning of the 4th day. He read it once. He read it twice. He read the part about the withdrawal protocol. He read the part about human operational control. He read the phrase permanent and non-negotiable. He stopped reading. He started sweating. He took the document to Elder Sylveth. She was in her private chambers, the small room carved into the dead moon stone lit by a single amber lamp. She was 499 years old. She had been there when the humans arrived. She had watched them sit in their chair for 3 centuries. Kalin knocked. The door opened. I found something, Kalin said. Section 7, Clause 12, Subsection 7. He handed her the document. Sylveth read it once. Her stone-colored face did not move. She read it a second time. She closed the document. We have made a mistake, she said. Kalin waited. The humans, Sylveth said. They didn't just withdraw, they activated a protocol. The protocol says that once they withdraw, the joint installations revert to human control. Permanently. Kalin swallowed. That means we cannot get them back. The facilities, the network, the borders. They control all of it now, and they are not coming back. Sylveth stood. She was ancient. Her movements were slow, but she did not hesitate. Call an emergency session, she said. Kalin hesitated. Call it, Sylveth said. The galaxy is about to learn that it has been measuring the wrong thing. The emergency session was called 9 hours later. The council gathered in the obsidian rotunda. The amber haze from the overhead rings caught the dust motes and held them still. 2,400 seats, 46 species, 9,200 years of certainty. Vex Corps sat in his seat. His ridges were pale. His hands were still. He had read the report. He had seen the mines. He knew what Sylveth was about to say, but he did not speak. He could not speak. There was nothing left to say. Sylveth rose from the highest tier. She looked down at the assembled delegations. She looked at the empty human seat. We were warned, she said. We did not listen, and now they have walked away. The chamber was silent. Not a single representative spoke. Vex Corps' bioluminescent ridges had gone dark, the first time in 189 years that anyone had seen them still. The amber haze caught the dust motes. The stone walls absorbed every sound. 2,400 seats. 46 species, 9,200 years of certainty, and a single 14-word sentence that undid it all. The motion passed 347 to 45. Nearly the reverse of the original expulsion. Vex Corps sat in his chair. He did not vote. He sat in silence as 347 delegations spoke against him. The motion read, "The Galactic Council formally acknowledges that the termination of Earth's observer status was an error and requests that Earth reconsider its withdrawal." The message reached Station Eternus at 09:12 local time. Syrah Kale was at her desk. The coffee was cold. The station was empty. She read the motion once. She set it down. She poured herself a cup of coffee. This time, it was hot. She did not reply. She looked at the coffee stain on her left sleeve, 19 years old, a brown smear on gray wool. She had still not cleaned it. The rotunda stayed silent. The motion passed. The record was updated. The humans were invited to return, but the human seat stayed empty. Sylveth walked out of the rotunda. She did not look back. Kalin watched her go, sweating, nervous and correct for the 4th time. No one ignored him this time. Vex Corps remained in his seat long after the rotunda had emptied. His ridges were dark. His career was crumbling. 118 years of maneuvering. 9 systems taken. A species he had dismissed as primitive, emotionally untested, and tactically irrelevant. A species that had been maintaining his borders for 3 centuries. A species that had walked away without a single raised voice. He stared at the empty human seat. He thought about the coffee stain on the coat. He thought about 19 years of patience. He had been measuring noise. He had been measuring noise for his entire life. He was still measuring noise. He did not know what else to measure. And that Sylveth would later think was the galaxy's greatest failure. Not arrogance, not ignorance, not the vote itself, the inability to recognize patience when it sat right in front of them. The coffee stain had been there for 19 years. It was still there. Vex Kor sat alone in the empty rotunda. The amber haze still hung in the air, catching dust motes that had been floating for 9,000 years. The stone walls absorbed every sound. 2,400 seats sat empty around him. 46 species had filed out hours ago. None of them had looked back at him. His ridges were dark. They had been dark since the vote. 118 years of maneuvering, 9 systems taken through political brilliance, a reputation built on the belief that the quiet ones were the weak ones. The quiet ones had just undone him with a treaty clause. He stood, his claws scraped against the stone floor. He walked to the speaking platform, the same platform where he had delivered his motion. The same platform where he had smiled when the vote passed. He looked at the empty human seat. The humans had nothing to do with it, he had said. They were maintenance workers. Not engineers. He had been wrong. He had been wrong about everything. He walked out of the rotunda. He did not look back. The report on the orbital mines had been classified, but classified documents had a way of finding the right eyes. The Vrethkar military read the report. The Vrethkar command read the report. The Vrethkar Council, the same council that had supported Vex Kor's motion, read the report. 4,200 mines, hidden along every approach vector, placed over 150 years of joint patrols. A message carved in metal and explosives they had not needed to fire. They had only needed to be found. The Vrethkar Empire withdrew from the contested systems 6 weeks later. No announcement, no explanation, the fleet simply turned around and left. The council always noticed when a fleet turned around and left. Sylveth received the report at 0216 Council Standard Time. She read it in her private chambers, the small room carved into the dead moon's stone, lit by a single amber lamp. She read the part about the mines. She read the part about the withdrawal. She read the part about Vex Kor's resignation. Submitted 2 days after he read the report. She set the document aside. Kalen, she said. The young Valley diplomat appeared in the doorway. He was still sweating. He was still nervous. He was still correct. Elder Sylveth. Have we received a response from Earth? Kalen swallowed. No, Elder. No response. Sylveth looked at the amber lamp. The flame inside the crystal was steady. She had watched it for 499 years. It had never flickered. Send another request, she said. The full council motion. The vote tally. The acknowledgement of error. Kalen hesitated. I sent it already, Elder. 3 times, no response. Sylveth did not move. Send it again. Kalen nodded. He turned to leave. The coffee stain, Sylveth said. Kalen stopped. I remember it, Sylveth said. The ambassador's coat, the stain on her left sleeve. She had it for 19 years. Kalen waited. She never had it cleaned, Sylveth said. I thought it was carelessness. I thought it was a sign that humans were disorganized. She paused. It was not carelessness. Kalen did not know what to say. He left the room. On Station Eternus, Jax Morrison had not left. His shuttle had departed. His belongings had been packed. He had stood at the airlock, looked back at the empty corridors, and decided he could not leave. He had walked back to Kale's office. He had knocked. She had looked at him, her gray-streaked hair pulled back, her coat worn smooth at the cuffs. Your shuttle leaves in 90 minutes, she had said. I know, Jax had said. They had looked at each other for a long moment. Get some coffee, Kale had said. The machine is still working. That had been 7 weeks ago. The station was still empty. The coffee machine was still working. The coffee stain on Kale's sleeve was still there. Jax had stopped asking about it. Are you going to answer them? He asked now. He was sitting across from her desk, holding a cup of coffee that was going cold. He had been holding it for 47 minutes. Kale looked at the data crystal on her desk. The council's motion, the acknowledgement of error, the invitation to return. No, she said. Jax waited. They measured us by their own ambition, Kale said. We measured ourselves by what we were willing to sacrifice. She looked at the stain on her sleeve. Sarah Chen died 6 years ago. She never knew we used the protocol. She would have laughed. Jack set down his cold coffee. Are you ever going to tell me what happened to her? Kale was quiet for a long moment. She was 38 years old. She had been an attaché for 11 years. She read the entire Viron Concord, all 1,887 pages of it. Jax waited. She found the clause. Section 7, Clause 12, Subsection 7, page 1492. Kale looked out the window. 6 years ago, she was on a diplomatic shuttle. The shuttle was lost. No survivors. They found the wreckage 3 weeks later. She paused. She was carrying a copy of the Concorde. She always carried a copy of the Concorde. When they found the wreckage, the Concorde was still intact. Page 1492 was still legible. Jack stared at her. Section 7, Clause 12, Subsection 7, he said. Kale nodded. Permanent and non-negotiable. The coffee on Kale's desk was cold. It had been cold for a while. She did not drink it. Sarah knew, Kale said. She knew what she had found. She knew what it meant. She wrote the protocol because she knew that one day the council would make a mistake. Jack swallowed, and they made it. Kale looked at him. They made it 349 to 44. Jax looked at the data crystal on her desk. The motion sat there, untouched, unread. It had been there for 7 weeks. Are you going to read it again? He asked. Kale shook her head. I read it once, that was enough. On Earth, Admiral Vasquez had received the same motion. She had read it. She had laughed. She had set it aside. They're asking us to come back, Hayes said. They're admitting they were wrong. Vasquez took a sip from her chipped mug. The mug said, World's Passable Admiral. Tell me something I don't know, Vasquez said. Hayes hesitated. They're scared. Vasquez set down her mug. They should be. In the rotunda, Sylveth stood at the speaking platform. She was alone. The chamber was empty. The amber haze still hung in the air, still caught the dust motes, still held them still. She looked at the empty human seat. I remember the day she arrived, Sylveth said. She was 23 years old. She spilled coffee on her coat. She sat in that seat for 6 months without speaking. She paused. I thought it was timidity. I thought it was fear. I thought it was the hesitation of a species that did not know how to speak. She looked at the seat. It was not timidity. It was patience. She walked out of the rotunda. She did not look back. Kalen was waiting in the corridor. He was holding a data pad. Elder Sylveth. There is something else. Sylveth stopped. The Stillwater Protocol, Kalen said. I found more of it. There are other clauses. Other provisions. Sylveth waited. Section 7, Clause 12. Subsection 7 is the withdrawal protocol. But Subsection 8 is the dissolution protocol. If Earth's delegation withdraws and does not return within 1 year, the Council's charter is dissolved. Sylveth did not move. Subsection 8, Kalen repeated. Page 1492. The humans wrote it into the Concord 41 years ago. They wrote it into the charter of the Council itself. Sylveth stared at him. 1 year, Kalen said. They have 11 months left. In the diplomatic annex on Station Eternus, Kale looked at the data crystal. She had read the motion once. She had set it down. She had not looked at it since. But she knew what was coming. In 11 months, the Council's charter would dissolve. The humans had written it into the Concord 41 years ago. They had written it into the charter of the Council itself. She had known about Subsection 8. She had known about it for 41 years. She had never told anyone. The coffee stain on her sleeve caught the light. A brown smear on gray wool. 19 years old. She had never had it cleaned. The Council had 46 species. They had 9,200 years of certainty. They had never been right about the quiet ones. In the rotunda, Kalen sat in the human seat. He was sweating. He was nervous. He was correct for the 5th time. He looked at the empty chamber. He looked at the amber haze. He looked at the seat he was sitting in, the same seat where a woman with a coffee-stained coat had sat for 41 years without speaking. He thought about patience. He thought about silence. He thought about a species that had measured itself by what it was willing to sacrifice. He did not understand, but he was starting to learn. The galaxy was beginning to ask a question. The question was simple. The question was terrifying. What just happened? And no one knew who to ask. The coffee stain had been there for 19 years. It was still there. In 11 months, the council's charter would dissolve. The humans knew, the council did not. The coffee stain had been there for 19 years. It was still there, and the galaxy was finally learning to see it. Kalen sat in the human seat. He looked at the empty chamber. He thought about patience. He did not know what to do with the answer, but he knew the question. What just happened? And no one knew who to ask. The amber haze caught the dust motes. The stone walls absorbed every sound. The chamber held 2,400 empty seats. The quiet ones were gone. The galaxy was just beginning to measure the silence. The coffee stain had been there for 19 years. It was still there. And in 11 months, the council's charter would dissolve. The humans had written it that way. They had always known. The galaxy had not. The coffee stain had been there for 19 years. It was still there. 11 months. The countdown had begun the moment the motion passed. The humans had written it that way. Subsection 8. Page 1492. A clause buried so deep that no one had found it for 41 years. Kalen had found it. Kalen had reported it. Kalen had watched Sylvith's stone-colored face remain perfectly still as she absorbed the implication. 11 months, Sylvith had said, and then the charter dissolves. Kalen had nodded. He had not needed to ask what that meant. The council was the charter. The charter was the council. Without the charter, there was no council. The humans had written it that way. The humans had always known. Months passed. The amber haze still hung in the rotunda. The stone walls still absorbed every sound. The empty seats still sat empty. But the council was not the same. The council was changing. The Vrethkar Empire had withdrawn from the contested systems. The Valith had returned to their patrol routes. The other delegations had begun to look at the empty human seat differently. They had begun to measure the silence. Sylveth sat in the highest tier. She watched the delegations file in and out. She watched them speak. She watched them argue. She watched them measure noise. She did not say anything. She waited. She had been waiting for 499 years. She could wait a little longer. On Station Eternus, the coffee was still cold. Sarah Kale sat at her desk. The station was empty. The corridors were silent. The lights were dimmed to minimum power. She had been the last human to leave. She was still the last human to leave. Jax Morrison had stayed. He did not know why. He had not been able to leave. He had stood at the airlock, looked back at the empty corridors, and decided he could not leave. He was still there. He was still nervous. He was still chewing his lip. 11 months, he said. He was sitting across from her desk, holding a cup of coffee that was going cold. He had been holding it for 47 minutes. Kale did not look up. The charter dissolves in 11 months, Jax said. The council is going to collapse. Kale looked at her sleeve. The coffee stain was still there. A brown smear on gray wool. 19 years old. The council was always going to collapse, she said. They just didn't know it. Jax set down his cold coffee. Did you know? Did you know about subsection 8? Kale was quiet for a long moment. Sarah Chen told me, she said. The day she gave me the protocol, she told me about subsection 8. She told me what would happen if we ever used it. Jax stared at her. You knew all along. Kale looked at him. Her gray-streaked hair was pulled back. Her coat was worn smooth at the cuffs. Yes, Jax, I knew. Jax did not know what to say. Sarah wrote it that way, Kale said. She wrote it into the Concord 41 years ago. She gave it to me. She told me to never use it unless we had to. She paused. We had to. On Earth, Admiral Vasquez had received the same information. She had read Kalen's report. She had read the part about subsection 8. She had read the part about the charter dissolving. She had set down the report. She had picked up her mug. She had taken a sip. 11 months, she had said. Interesting. Hayes had been standing in the doorway. She had been waiting for orders. Are we going to tell anyone? Hayes had asked. Vasquez had looked at her. Tell them what? They asked us to leave. We left. Whatever happens next is their problem. She had taken another sip. Close the door on your way out. In the rotunda, the delegations had begun to argue. The motion to admit error had passed. The invitation to return had been sent. But the humans had not responded. The humans had not responded to any of the requests. The delegations were nervous. The delegations were scared. The delegations were beginning to realize that they had made a mistake. We should send another request, one delegation said. "We should send a formal apology." Another said, "We should send a delegation to Earth." A third said. Sylveth listened. She listened to the arguments. She listened to the suggestions. She listened to the noise. "We should do nothing," she said. The chamber fell silent. "We should wait," Sylveth said. "The humans are not coming back. They were not coming back the moment the vote passed. They are not coming back now, and nothing we say will change that." The delegation stared at her. "The humans measured themselves by what they were willing to sacrifice," Sylveth said. "We measured ourselves by our ambition. We were wrong, they were right. And now we have to live with the consequences." She walked out of the rotunda. She did not look back. Kalen was waiting in the corridor. He was holding a datapad. He was sweating. He was nervous. He was correct. "The charter will dissolve in 11 months, Kalen said. "There is no provision for reversing it. The humans wrote it that way." Sylveth nodded. "I know." Kalen hesitated. "What do we do?" Sylveth looked at the empty corridor. The amber lights flickered. The stone walls absorbed every sound. "We wait," she said. "We wait and we watch and we learn." Kalen swallowed. "Learn what?" Sylveth looked at him. Her stone-colored face was immobile, but her eyes were not. "Learn to measure silence," she said. On Station Eternus, Kale had stopped looking at the data crystal. She had stopped looking at anything. She sat at her desk and waited. Jax had stopped asking questions. He sat across from her and waited. The coffee was cold. It had been cold for a long time. "The stain," Jax said. Kale looked at her sleeve. "The coffee stain," Jax said. "You never had it cleaned." Kale nodded. "I never did." "Why not?" Kale was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah Chen died 6 years ago," she said. "She was on a diplomatic shuttle. The shuttle was lost. No survivors." Jax waited. "When they found the wreckage, the Concorde was still intact. Page 1492 was still legible." She looked at her sleeve. "I was supposed to be on that shuttle. Sarah had asked me to come. I said no. I had to meet with the council. I had to be in the rotunda." She paused. "The shuttle left without me. Sarah Chen died. I lived." She looked at the stain. "The stain is 19 years old. I acquired it the morning I learned Sarah had died. I spilled my coffee. I never cleaned it." Jack stared at her. "I never cleaned it because I never forgot," Kale said. "Sarah Chen wrote the protocol. Sarah Chen found the clause. Sarah Chen died before she could see it used." She looked at him. "I keep the stain because I keep her memory." She was right. She was always right. And now the council is learning that. In the rotunda, the delegations had stopped arguing. They had stopped measuring noise. They had started measuring silence. The charter would dissolve in 11 months. The humans had written it that way. The humans had always known. Kalen sat in the human seat. He was sweating. He was nervous. He was correct for the 6th time. He thought about Sarah Chen. He had never met her. He had never heard of her until Kale had mentioned her, but he thought about her anyway. He thought about a legal attaché who had read the entire Veyron Concorde, all 1,887 pages of it, who had found a clause on page 1492, who had written a protocol that would bring the council to its knees 41 years later. He thought about patience. He thought about silence. He thought about a species that had measured itself by what it was willing to sacrifice. He did not understand, but he was starting to learn. The final day arrived. The charter dissolved at 0347 Council Standard Time. No announcement, no celebration, no ceremony. The charter simply ceased to exist. The council was no more. In the rotunda, the delegations gathered for the last time. 2,400 seats sat empty. 46 species had come. 46 species had left. Sylveth rose from the highest tier. She stood at the speaking platform. She was 499 years old. She had been there when the humans arrived. She had watched them sit in their seat for 3 centuries. "The council is dissolved," she said. "The charter is void. There is no provision for reversing it." The chamber was silent. "We were warned," Sylveth said. "We did not listen, and now they have walked away." She looked at the empty human seat. "The humans measured themselves by what they were willing to sacrifice. We measured ourselves by our ambition. We were wrong. They were right." She paused. "Go in peace. Or go in anger, but go." She walked out of the rotunda. She did not look back. Kalen watched her go. He was sweating. He was nervous. He was correct for the 7th time. He looked at the empty human seat. He thought about the coffee stain. He thought about 19 years of patience. He thought about Sarah Chen. He thought about the protocol. He thought about a species that had walked away without a single raised voice. He walked out of the rotunda. He did not look back. On Station Eternus, the coffee was cold. Sarah Kale sat at her desk. The station was empty. The corridors were silent. The lights were dimmed to minimum power. Jax Morrison sat across from her. He was holding a cup of coffee. It had been cold for 47 minutes. Did you know? Jax asked. Did you know this would happen? Kale looked at her sleeve. The coffee stain was still there, a brown smear on gray wool. 19 years old. I knew, she said. I always knew. Jax waited. Sarah Chen wrote the protocol 41 years ago. She wrote it because she knew the council would make a mistake. She wrote it because she knew the humans would be right. She paused. She was right. She was always right. Jax set down his cold coffee. Are you going to say anything? Are you going to tell them? Kale shook her head. No, Jax. I'm not going to tell them. Jax waited. They asked us to leave. We left. Whatever happens next is their problem. She looked out the window. Station Eternus was a 4-kilometer ring of metal and crystal. It was empty. The humans were gone. They know where we are, Kale said. If they want to find us, they can find us. Jax looked at her. Will you talk to them if they come? Kale was quiet for a long moment. No, Jax, I won't. In the rotunda, the last delegation left. The amber haze still hung in the air. The dust motes still floated. The stone walls still absorbed every sound. The chamber was empty, the council was gone, and the coffee stain on Sarah Kale's sleeve caught the light. A brown smear on gray wool. 19 years old. Still there. The galaxy finally spoke again. The first word was what, and no one knew who to ask. Kale did not know. She had never known. She had only known patience. She had waited. She had watched. She had measured silence. And she had been right. The coffee stain was still there. The council was gone. The quiet ones had won. She did not celebrate. She did not speak. She sat at her desk and waited. She had been waiting for 41 years. She could wait a little longer. The coffee was cold. It had been cold for a long time. She did not drink it. She looked at her sleeve. The stain was still there. A brown smear on gray wool. It would always be there. She never cleaned it. She never would. The galaxy was learning to measure silence. The coffee stain had outlasted the council. It was still there. It would always be there. She walked out of the station. She did not look back. The stain caught the light one last time. Then the doors closed, and the galaxy was left with its question. What? The coffee stain had been there for 19 years. It was still there. It would always be there. The quiet ones were gone. The galaxy was just beginning to measure the silence. The stain was still there. It would always be there.